work way through the whole thing.
Yeah, you can use those slides.
Well, yeah, the main slide's on this one, and then some notes on this.
Is that still on? It's, oh, no, there's no signal.
That's normal, that's me, sorry.
There's no signal.
Okay.
There we go.
No, do not wait. Do not assume everything is broken because I don't want to monitor that.
Okay. Can you get that paper with the password, please?
Always, if you connect to the monitor, then you get a system.
Come on.
I'm sorry, I can't think without what's going on.
Yes, it is working. Excellent.
Not too bad, am I? We're not there yet. So
No, I just want to.
10 more minutes, but you can already
Yeah.
slide. Oh, it would also be nice if you could keep the slides there so that I can open afterwards.
You want to copy them onto
Yeah,
this
I'll
onto this box?
Put on this box, yeah.
Just put them
I
on.
can copy, give them to the website and stuff like that.
Right. So if I just copy onto the desktop.
Yeah, that's fine enough. That works for me. Thank you. There's also XPDF, which I believe is better, by the way. If that works for you.
Yeah, it's events I've been testing in most of the time.
That's why you've been testing it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Like, you try it for me, yes?
I want to do that. I'm going to go with presentation.
Presentation.
There you go.
We don't have to go through.
Is that readable? In the back? Is this readable?
Is that okay?
Sorry? Yeah, but then the video team doesn't see. Then you have the video. That's fine.
Are we here to see it or are we here to have them here?
Sorry, you gave me that too early.
This one is right.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. But this is set via DHCP.
That didn't work.
It really doesn't want to stay put, this thing.
Yeah, no, I know what this.
Maybe
My ears aren't big enough.
stream stands instead of ARPU, I don't know.
This really doesn't want to stay
No,
put,
I
this
know
thing.
what the problem is.
Is that fine? ARPU and stuff like that?
And it's sort of in my beard, so it's going to rattle and.
Yeah, okay. Too bad then.
Oh, shit. I don't know why. Maybe I'm too slow. Too slowly.
Same issue as last year. You mentioned you have 12 feet. There's no thing, if there's stuff in between the monitor and the box, and it will open in 640 by 480. Okay. Resolution, which is very bad. Okay. But if you unplug the monitor here and plug it there and plug it in directly, you get 1280 by 120. Okay, that's plenty. Okay, this is which one we have now. So if you need to reboot it, that's good power. Okay.
Yes, UK power.
Exactly. Who steals from this?
Just don't data chain too many sort of other extension cables off it.
Put the slides on the desktop or something, or before or whatever.
Yeah. Now I'm using a PDF, so it's easy.
Yeah, sure.
And
Last
doing
last year, Phil did a talk about DI,
Right.
automating DI.
Yeah.
So he'd done his slides in as a what's it called again? A preceding file. Preseed file.
all right.
The entire preseed file was his slides. Like, what the fuck? But he did an installation and
Right.
he got some stuff in between with messages, and those were his slides. It was really well.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, that's a demonstration of how flexible it all is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really works well. I really like it.
Do something like that with my little iPad. It's just a little presentation as it starts up.
Well, yeah, but you need to connect that with something.
Oh yeah. The balloon is actually very connectable. It's a very good little thing. Because it's got a lot more space than most embedded devices. You can do a lot more with it.
So, still some more time.
Yeah. This should just work with. Is that the keyboard to control it?
Keyboard for the, yeah, right. And that's the mouse. And the layout is correct. So this is actually.
So it's all right. Right. Okay. So we can. Yeah. Lovely.
I will be waiting to you.
Yeah.
Things,
Yeah.
when your time is running out.
Yeah. I plan on having questions at the end because there's probably going to be quite a few
so
things that are actually.
The questions should be in your time as well.
Yes.
So you
Yeah. Of
don't
course. Yeah.
have some time to
Of course. Yeah.
Makes sense, but just.
Yeah. 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 Lovely. Some of the things I'm doing are a bit controversial, so there'll be plenty of questions probably. That's. Hmm?
Put a recorder, hit record, leave it on a desk. That way we've got audio backup in case we need it. Yeah.
That was how it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes much. Did it get any better back there? Or is it still washing? When it was dark, it was very good.
What? Oh, with my background, it's more like something pharmaceutical than some veterinary. Half a ton of caffeine should do it.
Sometimes pulling the audio you could cut it over the switch. The moment we have to set up the speed. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a few more minutes.
Yeah.
The team is rushing to fix the bug. Trying to work anyway.
Whoops. So there's more haste, less speed, isn't it?
Did they send to disk already?
No, it's already did, yes. Ah, okay, you said I should do it. I didn't know you were working with this machine from up there, so we don't have to leave.
On the other consoles. No, there's no screen running at the moment. Okay, so we'll start again.
Looks like this should work. Is this working? Wonderful. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Debian Developers Room. For the zillionth time, I've lost count. We've got a number of very interesting talks. Unfortunately, there's also one talk going to be missing. Lars Wirzenius couldn't make it because he fell ill. But luckily, Frans Pop already agreed that he was going to do another talk. This was one going to be about persistent device naming. So if you guys are interested in that, you should have a look at it. It should be at, what was it again? 4:30, is that correct? Yeah, 4:30. So anyway, that's for this afternoon. But right now, we have someone else doing a talk. This is Neil Williams, right?
Yep.
Right, Neil Williams. And he will be doing a talk for us about cross-building Debian and Tdebs, translation Debs.
Translation Debs, that's it.
This is about embedded stuff, and he will also be doing a companion talk in the embedded dev room tomorrow, I believe.
Yes.
But for now, please, everyone, welcome Neil Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm hoping to cover on this main talk is how Debian can work better to support cross-building, the changes that you can make in your own packages, and then the talk tomorrow in the embedded track is about how we actually use those packages, how we prepare the file systems and the various images that developers would want to use to actually use your packages on a tiny device, something like that, or the machine that I'm also targeting, which is one of those. Now, your basic debootstrap is what, 180 megabyte installed? Devices like that, you've got 64 megabyte total. So something has to change, something has to go. Because within that 64, you've got to get user data and you've got to get a full GUI as well. All the packages exist. I've spent the last year since I've actually been a DD putting a lot of packages into Debian that are small, compact, and they're designed for these kinds of devices. So the packages that are there, we've got the tools that we need now. What's needed is support from the rest of Debian to help me out to actually make the packages that you all prepare easier for me to work with. So the general changes, they're not specific for MDebian. They're not anything that's...
Sorry, I got to switch on the screen saver.
oh, what's the password?
Yes, just yes.
Right.
Slow. No issue. Sorry about that. Just go on.
I was just going on to the next slide. This one.
Oh, right.
Lovely. So that's our starting premise. That the default within Debian is if it works, then we enable it. If there's a mode or a function or an aspect of a package that can work in Debian, then the default is to enable it. What we try to do with MDebian and what we need for embedded devices is almost the opposite. If it's not absolutely essential, then disable it. If it brings in a lot of extra dependencies that wouldn't be necessary with just the core of the package, then probably we do a package split and just get more finer control over what you can actually install. And these are package splits that are not for the existing reason of just helping the archive. These are package splits on a functionality basis. And that's an ongoing thing, which I'll be looking at through bug reports in due course as we get through further into the all right. Now there's a lot of problems with terminology, nomenclature. You've got to get the conventions across when you're actually dealing with which machine is which. So we tend to use in build for the desktop machine, the one that's actually running the cross compiler, and host for the handheld. That's what I'm going to be sticking with through all of the MDebian stuff, through the talks and through the actual documentation for all the packages and tools and scripts and bug reports and everything else. So that's what we're looking at. Build for desktop, host for handheld. Now, the biggest problem we come up against when you try and reduce the size of that debootstrap environment is that depackage, apt, and everything else gets in the way because you've got tags in the control information that says this package is essential. It's actually a build dependency issue, but the way it's implemented tends to mean that you end up, if you have one package tagged essential, it'll drag in nearly all the others, and we just can't work with that. So currently what we're doing is actually patching your Debian control, and in the cross-build package we'll take out essential yes to give us that control over what packages we choose, and to give the developers for the boards themselves the choice of exactly what they want. They can have any package set that actually works. We also remove Perl, because Perl is huge, and taking out Perl in one fell swoop, it reduces the file space quite a bit. Now, there are obviously implications with that, which I'll come on to later. But there are ways that you have to either remove or re-implement some of the methods that you would use that would rely on Perl otherwise. And as I said, we're looking at, but not at this stage, but certainly into the future, we're looking at requesting extra package splits. And if you could help us out with that, where if you're looking at a package that's got maybe back-end modules, or it's got an easy split supported upstream already for different functionality, and you've actually lumped it all into one, maybe there's a way that we can work together to split those out and actually have functionality splits that allow us to particularly drop dependencies. That's the biggest issue. We want the core function of the program. We don't want the other sort of extras, like it'd be very nice to do things like gconf if we could drop the LDAP support and that kind of thing. So we are doing that with patches, but it'd be very nice to have that implemented in the archive so that we can actually give full customization for the packages themselves. The other things that we are dropping is we're actually dropping all the man pages and the info documents and readmes and documentation packages, things like that. There's no room for those on an embedded device. A lot of embedded devices, you don't have the methods to actually support viewing them anyway. So there's no point in having those around. That's where we start to get into the sort of, we are following policy as far as we can within the constraints of the actual device. But there are going to be plenty of times like this where the changes that we need are going to have to be implemented against the current policy. So there are some that we can do within policy, some that are going to have to be done with an Debian policy that's built on Debian but not actually fully compliant. It's just one of those things we have to fit in within the embedded system. This is the start of the first set of bug filing that I've already done, and it comes straight from the Auto Tools recommendation for Debian, and it's basically allowing your Debian rules file to pick up when it's actually being cross-compiled. It's a very simple set of instructions that you can add to any Debian rules okay? Just detecting whether build and host have been passed via dpackage itself, and setting up, in this case for a configure script, you're setting up build and host. And as we've discussed on Debian Devel already, build should be passed anyway, but host should only be passed when you're actually cross-compiling. Otherwise you can get issues where it's actually trying to use a cross-compiler for a Debian build. So there are bugs already filed for this. They're filed as wish list. They're filed with a patch. We've got the tools in Debian to prepare all of that fairly automatically. But the patches are tested, and they will work with the packages. So please, if you can, sort of work with some of the bugs and help us out to actually apply the patches that have been put up against the packages. There's not that many packages involved at this stage. We build in just under 200 source packages for Debian, and you can probably predict which ones they're going to be because they are the typical debootstrap packages, the ones you'd find in any sort of P builder, that sort of thing, with the exception of Perl. If you don't use configure, but you still use auto make, then there's a command also for passing the cross-compiler in the CC variable. Otherwise, what happens is that you go through the process of trying to cross-build, and it actually builds a native binary and packages it in an arm.deb, which really messes things up. For that reason, we do test the actual tools that we're using to build the packages. We'll test nearly all the binaries and most of the libraries, trying to make sure that every object file that actually goes into the archive for the Debian is the right architecture inside, as well as actually on the file name. The other way of keeping support within Debian itself without breaking anything is deb build options. Now, I'd like things like nodocs to have a more sort of generalized implementation, so that where possible, if you are generating documentation within the package and it's possible to just drop that generation, then nodocs could be used to allow us to build the package without documentation entirely and not spend time processing the documentation that we're just going to throw away. So that's the next set of bugs that I'll be looking at once we've got the current file system running and booted, is a series of bugs sort of looking at better no-doc support, particularly for the packages that we're dealing with. But if you've got any package that fits that bill, then a conditional for no-docs in your Deb build options would be very handy, because someone's probably going to want to cross-build it at some point, even if it's not Debian, for the kind of devices that we're looking at. The other one, obviously, when you're actually cross-building the package, if you've got a make check or make test target, it's going to try and run some kind of binary that's being cross-compiled, and it's not going to work. So at the moment, there are plenty of bugs that I've implemented the patch for the depackage architecture support, but I haven't gone as far as actually putting in the no-check wrapper as well. That's just because we're working through these incrementally, and there are bugs in other parts of Debian that still need to be fixed before we can really use the depackage build package -A. We still need the wrappers that we're using in Debian at the moment. So I'm working through the various problems. But if you have a make check, then it would be very good if you could just wrap that in a no check. And you wrap it for Deb build options. You don't have to worry about is this wrapped because of cross-compiling. Just specify it as a Deb build option. If you find it in the string, then you can omit that. UDEBs, they're very specialized for the DI team, and they're not really applicable to what Debian wants to do. We don't use that kind of installer. We don't need that kind of process. Cross-building UDEBs can be a bit tricky. You bring in lots of unnecessary dependencies or build time dependencies. You have lots of packages you have to work with that you wouldn't need to otherwise. So at the moment, the Debian patches are actually removing UDEBs from the package entirely before the cross-build. Now, if it is possible to support a Deb build option no UDEB, then that would be another set of wish list bugs that I'd be looking at to try and get support to omit the UDEBs and stop them being built in the first place. Yeah.
Could you give an example of where wanting to build UDEBs pulls in extra dependencies? Because I can't think of any. You say you get extra build dependencies. I don't believe that.
I can't think of one off the top of my head actually about the extra dependencies. There was, because it was a while ago when I actually first built those. I thought it was GTK.
Yeah, I'd say GTK directive B.
Oh, the directive B. Yes, that could be.
All right. There aren't many that actually bring in the extra dependencies. The issue is UDEBs are not designed for Debian. They're not designed for what we need them to do. And commonly, the actual, we're not going to use them. We would like to be able to just omit them completely if at all possible.
Just wonder if tuning down the build dependencies is worth it, because at build time you don't have a problem.
True.
So
yeah.
Why not just leave the build dependencies as they are and just drop packages?
Yeah. In the majority of cases, that's fine. It's more in case of streamlining the actual cross-build process so that we can have an auto builder and simplifying the work of that auto builder as much as you can. In case you get problems where the build for the UDEB is actually just, as I say, it probably is only GTK that's actually got that extra dependency, so it's not really a huge issue.
Want to ask you to use keyboard options to many people to not use any UDEBs since it's only affecting GTK.
The extra dependency is only affecting GTK, but if there's the UDEB build itself does seem to be problematic. And if the package can build normally, fine. You re-enable the UDEB and then cross-build can fail. So there is still an issue there. I haven't really looked into it in a lot of detail on specifically UDEBs at this time. but that is something I'm looking at so that's more a case of highlighting the issue and then looking for a response like that to say where we go from there.
Shouldn't be difficult to just Tdebs build to drop the Tdebs from the changes file and just delete them again. So you build them and just delete them in the auto builder, so you even don't see them anymore. That should be
No, but
the
the
auto builder.
yeah.
Should be just 1 of an hour of work for all packages.
Yeah, I mean, I'll look at it again, but the issue was some of the UDEBs weren't actually cross-building in the first place. But there have been so many changes in the tool chains and the various support for cross-building in the meantime, I may have to go back and look at that again. Maintainer scripts. Now, it's all well and good cross-building the actual package, but there are going to be times when your maintainer scripts either are Perl themselves, or they call Perl scripts that are in Debian Essential normally, or you'll have various other reasons why you've got a maintainer script accessing Perl in some way or other. So that's another reason why we're actually patching the source on there. There's not a lot that Debian can do at that point. But if there is a way of not using Perl for certain packages, maybe that's an idea to help us out. But that's just an indication of the kind of changes we're making. And then another one, we don't need any of the backwards compatibility stuff that's in the maintainer scripts. So if I'm taking out sections of maintainer scripts for Perl or because they handle info pages or other things, we also take out backwards compatibility checks just to try and make sure the package will install cleanly on a new environment. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's how we're actually trying to run the cross builds. And the scripts that we use still need to implement a couple of workarounds for remaining issues, both in the packages themselves and in dpackage itself. Now, for dpackage, I have got the bugs filed, I have got patches there. I'm looking to try and hopefully get those patches applied as soon as possible. But the first one we're going to look at is the library workaround. This was always been in dpackage cross since probably Woody or before thereabouts, where it used a supplementary script. It's really a hack, but it's a supplementary script that rewrites the path of the actual build process itself. So when you're running GCC and all its -i commands and all the various -l commands that come through, GC cross was actually rewriting all of those to make sure they all pointed to user ARM Linux GNU lib and user ARM Linux GNU include, because there were issues where that wasn't happening. Now, we've worked around, we've got a better system for that, but there will be bugs where I'll be seeking your help to actually work out how the library can locate itself. It's generally when you have more than one library or a library and a binary in the same package. And then the second build tries to link against the first. It finds the one you've built, but then the library binding gets confused again and actually looks at the host libraries instead of the cross libraries. And that's so the build then fails. The way we're working around that at the moment is with a new file, Debian X control, that we patch in. And we set a field for that, and that re-implements the old workaround. But that is just a workaround until we can get the packages themselves fixed. So there will be issues like that that we need to look at. They are package specific, and they're generally upstream issues. They're often down to the makefile AM not using the correct macros and variables for the top source directory, and getting confused and looking at things a bit too simply. Debian X control is quite an important file that we could be looking at using much, much more. Simon Richter has written a Debian X control package, and that's actually one of the tools we're going to use to work with the next generation of sort of cross-building support, where we are able to dynamically change the way that the control file works, substitutions, variants, and things like that. At the moment, we're using it just to split apart the build depends, so that we can say, right, these build depends actually need to be installed as cross packages, and these build depends are just tools. They're things like Quilt, CDBS, Deb Helper, and we can have those on the host on the build system without any kind of need for crossing those. Again, it's simplifying the cross build process. That bug tends to affect nearly all packages that try and actually cross build. So the workaround is built into our scripts. There is a bug filed, and there's a patch for dpackage to try and fix the LD library path so that you can actually find the right cross libraries. And anything you use in package config, there's another bug that's been filed against that for dpackage support to actually specify the right lib directory in the first place so that you can find the libraries during configure. Okay. Now, the other part of the Debian changes really centers on your translation files. This is where I'm going to look now at Tdebs and how they fit in with the whole cross-building support. Now, there are outlines for translation debs already in Debian, but Debian needed them very quickly, so we've gone ahead and actually implemented a working version of translation debs that suit our needs and which should be transferable into Debian under the existing plans that are on the wiki. So the idea is to not install user share locale translation files for locales that are not actually configured on that particular machine. So you test whether the package is installed, you test whether the locale is configured, and then that enables you to go and get the right locale package and install just that one, so that you only get translations for French. You don't get Hungarian and German and everything else that you don't actually understand yourself. Now, I can see where Debian has got the idea to install all translation files because you don't necessarily know who the user is for the machine. But for an embedded device, you've generally got that sort of link where the user is only going to want certain locales installed. And at default, that laptop here, just running a basic GNOME environment, user share locale is something like 250 megabyte just on its own, just with translation files. So it's a huge issue. The problem you come up with is that you then end up with a huge increase in the number of packages. The way we do the actual split is to have one locale for every source package, creating one Tdeb. So if you have 8 translations in your package, you'll have 8 Tdebs generated. We've also included a customized source package that just contains the pot file, enough files to make the PO file and the other sort of gettext support, and the existing translation, if any, and that can then be used by translators. And that's all experimental. It's only an idea that's implemented at the moment, but there are ways that you could then allow translators to upload Tdebs separately. That's one of the ideas from the Debian wiki. The increase in package numbers is staggering. We would go from what we now 20,000 packages, we go close to 250,000 instantly. So that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for Debian either in many ways. So we're using a secondary repository and a separate tool that downloads the cache and then bins it, because you're only going to use it to actually update the locale packages. It's not your main apt cache. The application works with apt, and it's one I've written myself for these embedded devices. In order to sort of provide some kind of fallback support, then the repository itself is marked up via the locale root, so that you will find in the PT section of the repository, you'll find PT, PTBR, and all the other variants of Portuguese translations for that particular package. So what the lang update binary does is it parses the list of supported locales, generates a sources list temporary that uses the locale root, and then goes and offers whatever packages it can find for the ones that are actually installed. Okay. That's 35 minutes left. Right. Now, a lot of that is well, some of it is contentious, some of it has implementation issues. But yeah, Franz.
I've read your documents and I've also read your blog posts about this. And there's one issue I see, if I understand correctly, how you're going to implement it. Am I correct that you're planning to implement this as an ARC all solution? So you would have only one Tdeb for all architectures?
Yes.
Couldn't it be that that will be correct in most cases?
Yeah.
But isn't there a risk that there will be some packages that have different translations or different strings for different architectures?
As far as I'm aware in Debian at the moment, that's not. I'm not aware of any packages that are actually handling it that way. I suppose there might be some that are hidden, but I worked on the premise that there are a lot of packages already that put their translation files into data packages or common packages, which are Arch all. I take the point. There may well be some. I'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Do you know of any that might do that?
Well, I know Debian installer does it.
Right.
But that's not going to be a worry. But because Debian installer does it, I sincerely doubt that there's not another package that does it as well.
Right.
That has some things that are generated at build time and that are architecture specific.
Right. So we're talking about translation strings translated, marked up for translation, which would vary according to the architecture at build time. That's, yeah, I would need to look at that again to make sure that the actual cross build itself in the first place is actually selecting the right arch via get text. So if you know of a package that does that, I'll be.
I don't know.
No.
This package is in fact is right because the first number in the magic number in the MO file, which is generated by the translation by get text, is the magic number that can be big Indian or little Indian, and depending on that, you will choose the architecture. In fact, there's two architecture or MO5.
So how is that handled currently then? Because you have got data and common packages that are.
Performance if you work with little Indian and big Indian files, because you just have to shift all the number in the file. So there's some scheme to recognize if you have produced file on a big Indian or little Indian architectures, but you risk to have problems if you set Arch all on this kind of package.
I'll look at that because the main drive for writing minstall Tdeb in the first place was to get rid of the translation files from the cross-built package and separate them out. So because we needed space. The actual usage of these and the runtime issues and the build time issues like that, I'll need to look at from there. So is that something that would affect every translation file?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to affect pure documents.
No.
It's going to.
It's going to affect .mo.
Your .mo files.
It may well be because we're actually the way that minstall Tdeb works. It's actually a secondary build. the cross build finishes, minstall tdeb starts up, and it just processes the PO files. So it may well be something I can actually handle within the package, so that the mo file that gets put into the tdeb is the right endian for the architecture that's been selected for the build. Yeah.
2 points. One, it sounds trivial to just invert the endian list of a mo file then. So it should be trivial to write a small program that can do that.
No, in fact not, because most of the fields in the getText MO file are clear, and because they are documented through getText documentation. But in fact, there is one space in this file which is the hash table, which is not documented, and because
Can an MO file made on i386 be read on Spark?
yeah, but
Right, then it can be mechanically converted.
yeah, but you will have performance issue, and it's not an issue when you're talking about Spark, but
No.
it's an issue when you're talking about
No,
ARM.
but the
because
point is that if
you
it
don't
can
have
be
the
read,
same power.
it can be mechanically
And
converted.
the script that they were thinking of there would be run on the build machine.
Yeah.
All right.
Not on the tablet.
Then
But
the
I actually did have a question, which
Yeah.
was, is Debian purely cross-built? Or
Yes.
does it, so what about packages that can't be cross-built? I can think of upstreams that can't be cross-built at the moment that might be interesting to an embedded platform such as Lua.
right.
The actual Lua binary can be cross-built, but if you attempt to cross-compile any Lua scripts down to its binary form,
Right.
you can't, because, for example, ARM has slight double inverted doubles.
Yeah, yeah.
It has middle endian floating point, which nobody else uses. So you can't part build a Lua script and it's on anything and expect it to work on ARM.
In the embedded track, I'm going to. Oh, sorry. Would you?
I was just going
You
to
can
say,
just about expect it to build on ARM.
would it work on ARM-EL? Because we've got rid of the middle endian horribleness.
If ARM-EL doesn't have the middle endian horribleness, then it will work as long as it's the same endian. But the binary format doesn't contain endian swapping information. So if you attempt to load one that's prepared on i386 on Spark, it will explode.
Right.
Okay.
So that big, yeah. I'll be covering that whole issue in the embedded track talk tomorrow, about how you can start to mix Debian with MDebian and the issues that could result from doing that. But it is possible, certainly.
What about if you run the MDebian building on the same architecture that you're building for?
Yes, that was
Is that
fixed.
okay?
That was fixed last November at the Self conference. I had people there. Yeah.
That MDebian built.
Yeah, because
The target.
you would then just bring down the patches and apply the patches in effectively a native build. We got the same request a lot from people who want to build for very small 386 boxes. They want to put MDebian on it, but they're actually doing a native build. So there was sort of work done in Austria to try and implement that. So that it's, and if it doesn't work, then file a bug and let me know.
Just one little remark about the MO5.
Yeah.
It also uses a special way to align in memory strings translated.
Yeah.
And just in the documentation, you can see that it's made for RISC architecture. So I think can be you just have to do something to take into account the fact that these files are ARM specific, and it's not just big Indian, little Indian. In fact, it's big Indian, little Indian, and memory alignment. So you got a big work concerning this file.
But it's interesting because the Debian packages, as you say, would have that problem, but it's more of a problem to us. So yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's with having minstall tdeb as a second sort of build process at the end, there are lots of various things we can do there to try and either see if getText can be persuaded to write out a different binary format, and in effect to actually run getText as a cross. I mean, it may be possible to do something like that and work on it that way. But the implementation is going to mean then you're not just going for a 10-fold increase in package numbers, you're going for a 100-fold increase in package numbers by the time you actually spread that out to the other architectures. it makes it all the more important that we have a secondary repository and a temporary cache and a program separate from apt and dpackage that can work with all that and just bring down the one package that the user needs for that particular installed package. Yeah.
What's your plan about DevConf? Questions and...
We replaced DebConf with CDebConf.
Okay.
There is one little issue with that, which again, bugs are already been filed, where CDebConf, first of all, it doesn't set up its own DebConf database properly, but that's fixed in our sort of packaged version of it. And also, the default environment tends to only look for DebConf and not have the CDebConf environment variable set. Once the correct environment variable is set, then it all works through. So we can ensure that the actual installed machine will have the environment variable sorted out, and there won't be a problem at all. So it's CDebConf that will actually do the work.
So you're going to join the development effort around CDebConf and switching main Debian systems with CDebConf, or?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because there won't be, DebConf won't actually be there because there won't be Perl. it's not there.
We are lacking manpower in this area, I think, so it's great to have more people interested in doing that. Yeah. Because
as you said, there's already a transition trying to get CDebConf instead of DebConf anyway. But all the bugs that I've filed so far, they're all, as I said, they're all wish lists. They're all there for, and as I said, I've done as much of the patching as I can. Where did build checks? Oh, one other part of the maintainer scripts is update alternatives. I'm not sure where we're going to go with that at the moment. You've got the issue that you can't actually run update alternatives itself because it's a Perl script. But you've also got the issue that because we haven't got the same requirements for essential packages, then you have the option, or at least of making sure that you don't need alternative support, because the people creating the actual file system images and installations, the support can be there to ensure that you don't get those conflicts in the first place, because we're actually stripping down the system entirely. How that will work out in real practice is yet, I'll work on that as we go. But if there's any ideas on alternatives and other sorts of foibles within dpackage. All right. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
Interested in pushing this Tdeb thing into the main account?
Yeah. All right. I mean, as we've seen now, there are still issues, and it's still experimental. But if others like the idea and think it can actually work in Debian itself, then fine. Yeah, all the code is there, and I'll work on it in Debian as well. How does it sound with the idea of a temporary repository? I mean, the mirrors are still going to have a lot more packages. They're very, very small packages. You're talking about the smallest deb you've ever seen, but because the .deb only contains the .mo file and nothing else. This contains its control information, but nothing else. It has no dependencies. It has no issues like that at all. So how does that sound in terms of running that kind of system within Debian on the mirrors?
I'm not any of the group of FTP masters, a bit of the group of the mirror admins, but I definitely think it would be a bad idea to blow up our normal packages files with lots of new packages.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a set. Because
it will also confuse our users. So yeah. I think we could add it on our mirrors, but definitely not as normal packages files.
Oh no.
Yeah,
right.
So
well,
And we need probably just say, well, we have a subgroup of mirrors that contains a few more packages, which should be doable anyways.
Okay, well, the way I've done it on Debian repository is that it's a completely separate repository. It's a completely separate URL.
That's not difficult anyways to do it in Debian one as well as that.
Yeah. So it's just the actual it's the space issue more than anything else. That's the.
But if you say you have a separate group of things, you can just say, well, which meshes have space,
Yeah.
and we go on the mesh
Yeah.
space.
Okay.
So that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. Good.
So one possibly not quite as trivial way of doing it would be to create a new set of indices. So we have packages, sources, translations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've implemented it at the moment as a normal archive because that's where the support is in Reaper Pro and DAC and others.
Sources, translations, and then all of the tools for managing the
Yeah.
packages that we have installed
Yeah.
were updated so that they could understand that when I fetch this package, I need to look at my locale and go and fetch the appropriate translation package as well.
Yeah.
Then it would become a much more integrated solution.
Yeah. And obviously you're reducing the size of the actual original binary in the Debian mirror anyway because you've
Indeed.
taken out all the locale
And
files.
that way, scripts like DebMirror and the like can choose whether or not to mirror the
That particular
translations
index.
and
Yeah.
therefore appropriately the Tdebs, which can just
Yeah.
sit in the pool in the appropriate place.
Yeah. And what I'm looking at is with the no-docs support, it is possible that you could have translated man pages and other translated documentation in the Tdeb. So the Debian Tdeb would be much bigger, and the Debian Tdeb would just have the .imo. Okay. Franz, did you have a question? Or? Okay. Yeah.
You just touched on it there. I just wanted to confirm, does your Tdeb stuff, does the infrastructure you've done allow for other translation systems other than GetText?
Not at the moment. I mean, theoretically, there isn't anything to stop it once you've actually put the support into the install Tdeb script. As long as the other translation system, whatever it is, has a way of separating out, presumably they all have ways of separating one language from another and having independent files for each one and no sort of interdependencies.
The system I use is a bit complicated in that you have separate files for each different language, but
Yeah.
they can inherit from each other.
Now, see, that would break with a Tdeb situation because you wouldn't have any of the others.
For example, I mean, say you've got GB and
Yeah.
US.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're translating from one to the other, if
Yeah.
one of the strings happens to be the same in both
Yeah.
versions, you don't bother including either one of them.
No, exactly. Whereas GetText follows the approach of the rest of many sort of Debian packages, which is that all everything. So GetText is implicitly duplicating.
You just have a dependency then on the one
Yeah.
it depends on.
Yeah.
My work.
Well, it depends on the other Tdeb.
Yeah.
EN Tdeb.
Because
EN GB and an EN US.
yeah, because a dependency within the same locale root is not a problem.
Right.
Because they're going to be in the same directory in the repository. Because you have the EN source. What it'll have is deb, HTTP and Debian /locale. Then instead of main and non-free and contrib, you would have EN, PT, FRD. You'd have about 30 of those components. And then within each component, you then have all the packages that are from that locale root. So NGB, ENCA, all those would be in with the N file. So it'd be easy then to have a dependency from there.
But even dependency GOS components shouldn't be so problematic. Because what it could technically do is because we are speaking about, well, it could make our components do a bit different than they have recurred in the archive. So that you could link package and say, well, we have one package with available from lots of components, which we even all the consultants main Debian archive for the RIP partnership in case we move, for example, from content to main or back to another direction.
Right.
Something like that could make sense as well in that case.
Yeah. It certainly is trivial to allow multiple components to claim to own a single file. That's well
You just need to put it into two different locations and typing them also.
Yes, it tends to be opposite. Yes. If you do it with hardware, it upsets us.
Yeah.
Would you also be including translations, for example, in the Tdeb?
In the Debian Tdeb, not in the Debian
No,
Tdeb.
sure.
Because what I'd like is for whatever script you actually do to create the Tdeb, whether it's install Tdeb or whatever, and replace it, it should be able to look for no docs in the dev build options and just drop everything except for
For
no.
the Debian solution.
For the Debian solution, you can have any translated content that you want. There is talk on the Debian wiki about translated images. Images that contain text, and the text translated, putting the translated text in the Tdeb. So potentially some Tdebs in Debian could actually cover quite a lot. Yeah, there is support that can be done as easy as any other change to that. What's the feeling generally on having this sort of supplementary build at the end of the build? You've done depackage, build package. It comes to the end. It says, "Well, there's your changes file." Or it runs Lintian, and then it goes in and does the Tdeb generation. I initially did this as a script within the build, and it proved problematic. This solution is much simpler. So, are there particular problems? Trying to actually process the locale files within the normal build, and then having to deal with DH move files, DH install, that's looking for these move files all of a sudden because they've gone, because you've got them in another package, and then you've got problems with the files file in Debian directory because you end up with the wrong file information for the package. Yes. Yeah. And it means that you can have a completely separate .changes file, which is where the source upload comes in, because you will need a separate .changes file to have two separate uploads. You upload the package to unstable, you upload the Tdeb to the locale repository.
I think they should follow the same route, to be honest.
And then split them once after upload.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
Or
one upload, one changes file because one thing, it's one complex change you're uploading.
Yeah.
Whatever happens matching up to the person, FTP master, whatever, shouldn't be transferred to the person uploading.
That was the solution I did for Debian, and if we apply it in Debian itself, then we can sort out all the other issues from there. Yeah, but that would probably.
That should be our goal, definitely.
Yeah, for Debian, fine. Yeah.
there's a related thing though,
Yeah.
actually, which would suggest splitting them differently.
Right.
Some discussion I've had with other people about translations and whatever, quite a few completely separate
Yeah,
from this,
right.
sorry for hijacking slightly. With the Tdeb, it would be useful to be able to generate them afterwards, completely separately.
That's where this
from
script
the
comes in.
packages, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just for this, but specifically so, for example, actual translations can
Yes.
be updated
Yeah.
whatever later on.
That's the other appeal of having this sort of customized source package, which just contains enough data for the translator to regenerate a new translation file. He doesn't have to bug you literally with a wish list bug and a patch. You can simply, it would be some form of allowance that we have for Debian maintainers. We'd have Debian translation uploaders, something like that. I mean, that's probably a way off, but it's certainly, there's no point in not enabling that because the system can inherently cope with it, and it would make life so much easier for everybody.
That would become difficult if you have ARC-specific
Yes. Yes.
text.
So I'll need to look at that with respect to the get text and try and work out whether we can get text to do what we wanted to do.
Well, it's not only get text. As I say, I can imagine situations where you would literally have different strings.
Right.
But the different things can just be combined in one Tdeb. That's not so hard because they won't make the package so much larger. But if it's that we get quite bad performance in all packages,
Yeah.
that would be what we.
It's only, but the extra strings only means a little bit of duplication.
I'm not worried about, the problem is not having two different strings for different architectures.
Right.
The thing is that for one architecture there will be only one string.
Right.
For another architecture there will be a completely different string. So
Right.
You can have both strings in your CPU file.
no,
Yes, you can.
because That's not the way
They're
of
in the
streaming.
same place in the source.
Well,
One example that I
if
do have.
the string you're trying to get into your MO file is generated at build time, then it's going to be impossible. It will be different every build. Then it's going to be impossible to translate it. That's one thing. If it's going to be the same every build, then but different on an architecture, then you can just collect all the strings from every architecture, put them in one PO file and translate that. And you need to do that anyway because otherwise the translator can't do its job.
That's right. It will be. They will be all there in source,
Yeah.
but they're not. They are not. They don't necessarily have to be all there in the binary package.
Well,
Let me give you one example.
Yeah.
The installation guide.
Right.
The installation guide has completely different texts
Yeah.
for each architecture because a lot of the instructions are just different.
Don't you think that's actually a very specialized package, though? I mean,
Yes, and in practice it's not a problem because we generate different packages
Yeah.
for each architecture. But I'm just mentioning it as an example.
that's a potential problem. Yeah.
I would be very surprised if there's not one package in Debian that has this. I would really be very surprised.
Okay.
Just for reference, message format takes alignment, endianness, and hash table control arguments. So as long as you pass it the right arguments when you build your Tdebs, it'll be fine.
Excellent. Thanks for that bit of research.
Why are they a binary format anyway? You only load it once when you run the program. It's not that expensive to compile.
Have you ever read a PO file?
I know it was hideous, but I didn't realise it was that fast.
There's quite a lot of extra comments and other sorts of fluff in a profile.
Right.
And a PO file has both the original and the translation.
Yes.
So
Yeah, but
does
MO
the
file.
MO file. Does it? Oh yeah.
how else did you think it would
How else do you think
find
it can
it?
retrieve the translation based on the original when you execute? The comment from just this gentleman here is that the MO file can be mem-mapped and then trivially parsed.
So it's just internal ellipsis structures encoded into the MO.
It's not actually. It is. Actually, it's explicitly written out carefully
so it's documented
because even on a
internal
64-bit
structure.
platform, everything's 32-bit aligned.
You need a good reverse.
Good code in Unity.
Yes, it could be 4-bit grey code.
Okay, I think I'll end it there. Thank you very much for your attention.